The efforts to secure peace in Palestine, in Israel, in Gaza, are going on with enthusiasm at the moment, but they're fraught with symbolic gestures, of course, and with foolishness. Symbolic gestures carry heavy weight, and David Lammy, the new UK Foreign Secretary, found himself at the centre of a controversy which has been exposed in the Daily Telegraph or the Sunday Telegraph today after removing a little yellow pin badge expressing solidarity with Israeli hostages during a diplomatic meeting with the Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa. And this incident highlights the delicate balance that is needed, the delicate balance that diplomats perform in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, where every gesture, every symbol can be interpreted and poured upon as a statement of allegiance and bias. So David Lammy and his French counterpart, Stéphane Séjourné, were meeting first the Israeli Foreign Minister, Israel Katz, and holding hands, the three of them, and then they were meeting the Palestinian Prime Minister, Mohammed Mustafa, and holding hands, and in both cases expressions of solidarity. And taking off the badges between those two meetings is really the only big difference, except for the Prime Minister. And it says something. If the badge is something you're wearing to try and express solidarity, why take it off? And keeping those badges on would have sent a clear signal to the Palestinians that, the Palestinians are to be supported, but keeping hostages is inappropriate. Hamas should release the hostages. It reinforces the international community's demand for their freedom. And Elion Levy, the Israeli government spokesman, and Arsen Ostrovsky, the CEO of the International Legal Forum, both pointed out this was a missed opportunity, and that leaving those badges on would have sent a powerful statement. And they suggest that there's an element of foolishness here, international foolishness. There should be unwavering support for the release of the hostages, and rather than shifting costumes and shifting stances depending on the audience. What is the point of diplomacy if there isn't a single message? If the message is that we're simply going to change depending on who we're talking to. Lammy has vocally condemned Hamas and called for the immediate return of all hostages, defending his actions by emphasizing his commitment to using every diplomatic tool to achieve a ceasefire. His approach is part of a broader Labour Party strategy that has evolved over time, particularly under Sir Keir Starmer's leadership. And while Labour has supported Israel's right to defend itself following the October the 7th massacre, terrorist event, it's also shifted to a call for a conditional ceasefire, contingent on the release of all the hostages. I think it should go further. I think it should be calling for peace, of which the ceasefire is part of that. And the language which is used is really important. Marching down the street calling for a ceasefire is calling for a pause. That isn't really of great significance. If the pause is going to be abandoned after a month, the Gazans are in the same position they're in now. They've just got a bit more aid. And that may make the Western powers feel more comfortable, but it certainly doesn't help people in Gaza. The only way forward is to call for peace and a clearly articulated roadmap to peace, which might involve a ceasefire. Well, it would involve a ceasefire at some point, and it would certainly involve the return of the hostages. Those two things are, or those three things, are non-negotiable, I would have thought. And if there's badges to indicate support for those three things, well, they should be worn. It's not about favoritism. The controversy reflects the broader challenge of diplomatic engagement in the Middle East, where actions are scrutinized for their symbolic significance as much as for their practical outcome. And Lammy's actions have come at a time of heightened tension in the region, with threats of increased violence from Iran and other actors. And the desire for that ceasefire, backed by negotiations in Doha involving Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, demonstrates the intricate and perilous nature of diplomacy in such a volatile context. But the incident with David Lammy is further complicated by the broader political landscape in the UK, with statements and positions on the Gaza conflict which have led to significant political fallout. For example, John Mason, the SNP member for the Scottish Parliament, was stripped of the party whip for comments perceived as insensitive regarding the scale of Palestinian casualties. This reflects the intense scrutiny and the high stakes involved in any public discourse related to the conflict. And the removal of yellow badges signifies a sort of diplomatic gesture that is one step too far. Here is the visuals have a meaning, and it's perfectly possible to do one thing with one hand and do another with another. And wearing a badge, expressing solidarity with the hostages, should not undermine the positive relationship with senior diplomats or senior politicians of either side. I think there are principles of humanity involved here. And I mean, going into a Palestinian meeting wearing an Israeli flag as a pin would be silly and inappropriate. Going into a Palestinian meeting wearing a flag of solidarity with the hostages is a positive. This incident serves as a reminder of the broader complexities and the nonsense of photo opportunities, where every action is loaded with potential implications politically and morally. But politicians need to reflect on the things that do not change.